Morning folks, I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters and the Pathfinder School. What I thought I'd do today is I just returned from Italy the other day. I was there for 9-10 days. I went to the Bologna Outdoor Expo and did some demonstrations and seminars there with my buddy Joe Price and my Italian interpreter instructor Luciano. We were there with Shimone Outdoors at their booth, and we were packed the entire show, doing demos on everything from shelter construction to kit building, fire demos up to and including the bow drill fire, lots and lots of things. Then we went from there to another part of Italy. I visited the OC Museum, which is the video that I posted yesterday. Unfortunately, we weren't allowed to really take a lot of video inside the museum, so there's more photographs on there than video footage. I apologize for that. But then we went and taught a class, a basic class in Italy, and the class was full, and we actually sold 2 extra tickets, so we were full plus 2. We had like 22 or 23 people at this class. I think it was 22 total we had at this class in Italy for a basic class up in the Alpine Forrest area of Italy. And I had a lot of people ask me on Facebook once I had posted some pictures from that event, which I'll attach a few of them to this video as well for you guys who don't do Facebook, and I get that. It's not a problem, but being in business, you don't have much of a choice. I am going to make a video of the kit that I used, or the kit that I carried over there with me for my trip to the forest and teaching this basic class. And I think it's important to understand a lot of things with your kit when you are camped in different environments, in different weather conditions around the world, because when I look back at what I used and what I did during my time in Italy for this class, really, other than a headlamp that I used at night because we couldn't start fires in the forested area, we could only do it in a clearing area where we were teaching, I didn't use anything all weekend that fell outside the 5 C's category other than eating food around the campfire with people, basically with my fingers or my knife. But food aside, all of the items that I use on a day-to-day basis fell into that 5 C's category. So I thought I would go ahead and pull out my pack and discuss with you guys what I chose to take and how I chose to use it. And I'll attach some pictures as well to this video of the class, again, for those of you who are not on Facebook. So stay with me and we'll get started right now. Okay, so I guess the first thing really, I put something over the table here. I put my shamag on the table, which to me is pretty much an EDC item. I carry that as part of my clothing, which again, that's part of your cover element, which is within the 5 C's, and I carry that just about every day. I put it on this table to kind of help the light from blowing it out on top of this table. I knew we had some problems with that when I did a sharpening video in the shop here. So the first thing I want to discuss was my pack. I took a 38-liter K-Pack Fjallraven pack, and I've been carrying this pack a lot. And honestly, 38 liters is about the limitation for what I did over the weekend at this basic class. We were there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 2 nights, and pretty much what I have in this pack on the inside section is nothing but sleeping arrangements. It's basically my sheltering system is in the main body of this pack. There's a little bit of room left over in here that you could put food and things like that if you needed to. But for the most part, the shelter goes inside this, and 38 liters really takes up most of that 38 liters, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So you probably couldn't go any smaller than this for an alpine environment where it's going to get down. When we got there, the water that was standing was frozen. There was some water running that we used for drinking water that we filtered through my Grail device, which we'll talk about as part of my carry over there as well, one of my containers. And at the same time, I think that you could add a little bit of food to this, like I said, but if you were going to be out there any more days than that, and you were going to have to change your clothing and things like that, other than maybe a spare pair of socks and things like that in here, you're going to need a little bit more room. But this 38-liter pack did the job for me just fine. So I think what we're going to do here is we're going to break this down into the 5 and 10 C's, because really there's nothing in this pack that doesn't fall within that 10 C's category. So while I carried all 10 C's with me because I was teaching a basic class and I had to teach those concepts, I really didn't have occasion to use anything while not teaching other than the 5 C's. So let's break it down first into the first element of the 5 C's, which is cutting tools. Okay, so I guess first of all, we'll cover it in this video that a lot of people have misconceptions that when I say the 5 C's, that means 5 items. It doesn't mean that at all. What it means is 5 categories of items. And obviously 2 is 1, 1 is none. Proper tool, proper job, and all that rah-rah. So I had 3 cutting tools with me for this class. I had an SAK Trekker, which is the non-one-handed opening. It's one that I've had for years. It's never let me down. It's got tweezers on it. I like that. It's got the toothpick on it. I like that. I don't like getting meat stuck in my teeth and then trying to dig it out with something that could put a splinter in my gums. So I prefer this. It's got a small saw on it as well, and it's got a few other tools. I carried my Silky Gomboy. Again, for flat out cutting firewood, this thing is a ticket. If you got to make quick poles for shelters, tripods, things like that, this will get the job done. Now, this Mora knife is a custom Mora Garberg. It's not the one that I carried at the class. I carried a different custom Mora Garberg that belonged to Joe Price because I gave my original Garberg that was on my hip away to a soldier at the show in Bologna. So I didn't have my knife. I borrowed one from Joe to use for the class. But a Mora Garberg is what I chose for my cutting tool. So this is representative of what I carry almost every day. So I had a knife, a saw, and an SAK. I did not carry an axe because of the weight traveling over to Italy inside my luggage. You can get away with putting a lot of things in luggage, axes, whatever you want to put in there for the most part, but everything adds weight, and you're only allowed so many kilos or pounds before they charge you a ridiculous amount of money for overages. Okay, combustion devices, again, keep it real simple, but have more than one. I have an open flame device cigarette lighter. Started every fire I needed with that, to tell you the truth, all weekend long. I have a 6-inch ferrocerium rod wrapped in duct tape for a handle or a flame extender. I was gifted this magnifying glass by Prometheus Leather, so I had it in my backpack, and I think it's a really, really nice magnifying glass, probably somewhere between 5 and 7 power. It's got a lot of surface area. It's concave on both sides. Excuse me, convex on both sides. So it's going to be a good fire starting element as well as an extra backup to a pair of reading glasses if I were to need it. But I also have the magnifying glass on my compass. As part of the 10 C's, I always carry a compass. That compass has to be multifunctional. It has a mirror for signaling and hygiene, also first aid, and also has a magnifying glass capable of lighting charred cloth and doing inspection for wounds to make sure debris out of them and things like that. But I carried this magnifying glass with me as well this weekend. That was gifted to me again from Prometheus Leather Works in Italy. Okay, so on to containers. I had 2 containers with me this weekend. I had the Pathfinder stainless steel bottle and cup, which gives me the ability to cook food, make medicine, make charred material, and disinfect groundwater resources if I have the ability to make fire by boiling the water. But I also carried the Grail filter with me, and this is the GeoPress. I've done a couple of videos on this for Instagram and things like that. It is a actual purification filter. This filter not only takes out the protozoa and things like that and the waterborne pathogens, but it takes out viruses and chemicals as well. It's a pretty simple device that you open up and pull the center out of it like this. A little tough to get out of there because it's got a good seal on it. It's got a filter that's good for 2,000 liters on the bottom. You just fill this container up to the line, and we use this a lot underneath a drain pipe that had water coming out of it underneath a road at the event. You'll see that in a picture that I'll post. And then you just replace this in the top and crack the cap on the top of it here, just like this, to allow air to escape. And then you hold it with both hands, just like this, and push down. And that forces the water through the filter and allows air to escape out of the top. It's a pretty simple process. And then you have 20 ounces-ish of clean water. And we used this all weekend. I had one of these with me. I had my wife's smaller original version of this in orange, and Joe Price had one in blue. We passed them around all weekend and used them to fill, filter, or purify, and then dump to fill all the water bottles and things for the instructors in camp for all of our needs from drinking to cooking. So this allowed us to disinfect and purify water on the fly when we didn't have time to boil water or we didn't have the opportunity to boil. So those 2 container combinations came in real handy this weekend. Okay, so let's talk about the cover element. To me, this is one of the most important things, especially in a cold weather environment, because getting a good night's sleep when it's getting down around the freezing mark. I don't think it ever got to or below freezing, but it was definitely well below 40 at night, and there was really high winds coming up through that forest area. I picked a really nice swaled area that was protected from the wind, and I set my shelter up, you'll see in the pictures, so it was almost like a wind foil. It was down on the bottom, lifted up here, so that the wind came up and pushed across the tarp face to kind of keep the wind out of my shelter. I use a real simple system of layering with my shelter, exactly like I do with my clothing. So the first thing I do is I use a ground pad, and this is a Snug Pack Scout pad. It's only about as long as from my neck down to my knees, and it's not real thick, but it's enough if you get a spongy part of the ground or you've got a lot of leaf litter and debris, it's good enough. If you're laying on dead hard packed ground, probably not going to be enough for you. It doesn't weigh a whole lot, and it's very compact. So that's the base of my shelters, to get rid of that conduction problem from the ground. The next thing I do is I start to build a multi-layered system. And what I do is I use an EcoTat sleeping bag, and this sleeping bag is a down-filled military sleeping bag that's not made anymore, unfortunately. This bag's not made anymore. It was a Marine Corps issue. And the reason I like this bag is for several things. Number one, it's down, so it's pretty warm. Number two, it has drawstrings at the bottom of it that were made so that you could actually sleep in boots if you chose to do that. So you could open the whole bottom of the bag if you want to. I've got it all tucked inside there. It will also open up completely and unzip, opened up completely, so that it can be used for a blanket, or it has a Velcro area here so that it can actually be used for a poncho liner. So you can actually use this underneath a military style poncho as a poncho liner that's going to be made out of down. And it has a nice drawstring hood on it like a mummy bag would have. And it's got drawstrings here. Again, that's for the hood. So you have a nice base system that you can build upon. It's going to keep you warm. It's made out of down. So what I do with that to keep it dry is I tuck that inside of a Snug Pack bivy sack, like a Special Forces, what they call a Special Forces bivy sack. And it's basically a real thin, lightweight material that's 100% waterproof, and it slides completely over the top of this bag to give me a waterproof membrane. And it doesn't seem to be unbreathable or non-breathable in any way, because I didn't wake up sweating, but again, I had the top of my bag open all night. I actually had occasion on the second night to pull one of the bags out completely because I was getting hot, and that was my inner layer. So I use this bivy sack here, and again, you can see that this is very small in nature. It's very light in weight. It's like a sil nylon. This is the top of it, and it folds up to about the size of a softball, but it easily covers. You can easily put that sleeping bag inside of it and have plenty of room inside there. So that gives you 2 layers of protection. You've got an outer shell and you've got an inner insulative layer. And what I do inside of that is I use this Helicon Tech Swagman roll. And again, the reason I like this is because of the multifunctionality. It can do several things for you. It opens up just exactly like this sleeping bag does, so that it can be used as a poncho liner with the advantage of having a hood. It has a hood and a large front pocket on it as well. It's got Polar Guard in it, so it's really nice and warm. It will zip up completely into a sleeping bag configuration, and that's what I did. I put this inside the EcoTat bag as another layer of insulation, but it can also be opened up, and it has drawstrings and toggles on both ends, so it could be used as a hammock underquilt if you needed it to be as well. So I have 2 different options here that I can use. I could use this inside of a hammock if I weren't sleeping on the ground, and use this as an underquilt, or vice versa, because this opens up all the way too. I could use this as a dedicated underquilt because that's kind of what it was made for, and put the sleeping bag inside a hammock and give myself an extra layer of protection that way. So this system I found to work really well. And again, I think it only got down right around the freezing mark. I don't think it got below freezing by any stretch, but it was below 40 without question every night. And with that system, I was very warm. Now let me stuff this back in here. Might have to get on the ground to do it. This Swagman roll will actually stuff into the pocket on the front as well. And what I ended up doing the second night was, because I was plenty warm the first night with this system, I got warm enough the second night that I actually pulled this out, folded it up into that outer pocket that we talked about, and I actually used it for a pillow. And it worked out really, really well for that as well. Although I do carry a dedicated pillow because I believe in comfort when I'm sleeping outside. I carried a poncho with me in case it rained, so I could use this in combination with the Swagman roll as a poncho liner if I were to get too cold. I didn't use this for anything all weekend, but it has a couple of stakes in the bag just in case it needs to be used for a tarp. Then I carried my 7x7 tarp that I've had for ages. This tarp is probably one I had since not very long after I first started making videos. It's a 7x7 coyote tan steel nylon tarp made by Oware Tarps. Again, it's 7x7, and I find that to be plenty big for my needs. I'm only 5'8". It sets up quick and it's simple. So that gives me a good shelter system. I have something that I can put on the ground. I have something I can sleep on top of. I have 3 layers that I can sleep inside of, and I have something that I can sleep underneath of. And that gives me a solid shelter system, and this entire shelter system only weighs about 4 pounds if you don't count this poncho. Okay, so other elements of cover above and beyond shelter that are clothing. Again, I had my shamag that I could wrap around my neck for insulation. I had this Fjallraven puffy jacket stuffed in the bottom of my pack. And every day I wore a Condor fleece, which is kind of like a knockoff of the Helicon Patriot. I got it actually in country because I didn't bring a fleece with me, and I thought, you know, we're going up at higher elevation, up in the mountains, there's snow up there, I'm gonna need a little more than what I brought. So I actually purchased that Condor in country, and I wore that about every day, and I never did pull this out of the pack, to be honest with you, but I had it just in case. Okay, for the cordage element, I keep it simple again. I had a roll of 36 bank line, and I really didn't use any of this other than for making one toggle for lifting my pot, or my bottle, excuse me, off the fire. I did use about 5 feet of this for that, and then teaching. I always take a ridge line with me that's pre-made. There's lots and lots of videos out there from myself, from my instructors like Corporal Corner, things like that, that show how to make this hasty ridge line. So I always carry a hasty ridge line that's already got toggles preset on it for my tarp. Makes it real quick and simple shelter setup. And then I carry about 6 to 8 feet of paracord in my pocket all the time. Again, multifunctional in nature. Emergency tourniquet, emergency bootlace, emergency bow drill fire, emergency garrote if you needed it. Something to hang your backpack off a tree. 1,000,001 uses for this piece of paracord in your pocket. I always recommend you carry 6 feet of it in there and have a loop already pre-tied in one end. And then above and beyond that, things that don't necessarily fall into 10Cs but go with the 10Cs. You know, I had this Snug Pack blow-up pillow. It's a really, really simple, small pillow that works really, really well. It's just a blow-up, just like the air mattresses are. You just open it up, you blow it up, and it's pretty good size, and it gives you just that extra level of comfort. Anybody who tells you that you don't need a pillow when you're sleeping in the woods and just sleep on your boots or something like that, you know, they're into suffering. If you got a pillow, you're not going to be suffering. You're going to be smoothing it. And so for what little this thing weighs, and for as small and compact as it is, I can actually either stuff this in my tarp bag or my hammock bag, and that's usually where I keep it, is in my hammock bag. But in this case, because I didn't take a hammock with me, I just dropped it in the top of my pack. But it is, you know, not much bigger, or about the same size as a tennis ball, and it's very, very lightweight, almost nothing as far as added weight to your pack. Then I carry 6 titanium tent stakes. I don't want to make tent stakes when I'm in a hurry to put up a tarp or get out of the weather. Titanium doesn't weigh anything. Titanium stakes are not real expensive. I put them on a carabiner. I pull up my ridge line. I hang the carabiner on my ridge line, and I start pulling stakes off of it when I need them to stake out my tarp. It makes it really, really simple that way. Other than that, the only things I had in my pack were the other 5 C's that we talk about so much. I had an extra shamag, which is more cotton material. I had a headlight, which I used in camp because we couldn't start fires in the forested area. I had a roll of 1-inch duct tape with me, and my instructors had 2-inch duct tape. I had a sail needle, And I also had my compass with my pacing beads attached that we used for Paul and for pacing exercises while we were doing navigation. So really, all I used other than teaching for the most part was those 5 C's, and I was perfectly fine for a 3-day period out there in the Alpine forest in temperatures right around freezing. I showed you my sleep system, and it was more than adequate with a good base layer. And that's really what's important, is the clothing on your back. You know, I wasn't wearing this cotton shirt. I was wearing a minus 33 degrees wool undershirt. I was wearing a minus 33 degrees expedition wear long sleeve base layer and long pants, and then wigwam wool socks. And then I had a Helicon merino wool beanie as well as a ball cap with me when it warmed up. I had the fleece. I had an extra puffy jacket if I needed it, and for an outer shell or outer layer from wind and rain, I had the poncho if needs be. And I was good to go, no problem. Guys, I appreciate you joining me for this video today, talking through the kit that I took with me to Italy and that I used in the forest for 3 days out there. Again, I'll attach a few pictures to the end of this video, but I think the moral of the story is, keep your kit simple. It doesn't take a lot to do a lot as long as your kit's multifunctional. Just make sure that you're comfortable with it and you practice with it before you actually need it, and have fun in the outdoors. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends, and I'll be back with another video as soon as I can, guys. Thanks.